Positioning is a thought process. It's something that's going on in people's minds when they're weighing up alternatives. Should they go with A, B, or C? And it's a way that we try and differentiate and distinguish between a couple of different options. As our minds, we hate things. We hate being confused. We like clarity, so we like to pick up on one or two things and actually make a decision based on being confident and comfortable that we've chosen something which is important to us. So it's something which was thought about first in the late 60s by a chap called Jack Trout, and he wrote a paper. That was the first time it was published, and he then got together with our Reese in the early 80s, and they wrote a book called Positioning: The Battle for Your Mind, and that was when it really started to get driven in as a concept. And the concept that it worked for businesses was as a competitive strategy, because 100 years ago people didn't have much choice, but with the rise of consumerism, people were faced with a lot of choice sometimes, and companies wanted to help people make a decision quickly. So they would look to find something that they could lay claim to with a particular brand, and reinforce that as a big point of difference. And it isn't complicated work. It's actually quite simple work. So, for example, let me give you an example here, Claire. If I asked you to choose me a brand of soap from the supermarket shelves, and you knew I had dry skin, which brand would you be thinking about buying? There's one brand out there which has positioned itself around the Achilles heel of soap, which is in fact being moisturising. So I don't know whether you've thought of that brand, but that's the one that most people tend to position around moisturising. So it's just one obvious almost word that you can associate your brand or your product with that will help people make a quicker and easier decision to actually buy. So it's in the purchasing element, the buying process, where positioning really does help people. And actually people really appreciate organisations that do this for them, so they don't have to waste a lot of mental energy thinking, well, which one should I go for? I can't decide. And organisations that do it find, in fact, that the organisation, people working in the organisation really appreciate knowing their clear point of difference in the sector. Definitely not. It's definitely for associations as well. It's for any organisation that has competition. And the research is showing us that 2/3 of associations feel like they're in competition with other membership organisations, and almost a half feel they're in competition with organisations in the commercial sector. So very, very clearly there's an opportunity to have a position in the marketplace to help get clearly across to people why they should be joining you. So it's in the decision to join, it's in that the journey into membership, where it will really, really help people make a choice as to what would be a good organisation to join. But I understand there's a lot of struggle around positioning. In the seminars that I do, I have one particular exercise which is for delegates to create a value proposition statement. And the last part of the template that we use actually asks them to write down their point of difference. And I see them struggling with actually trying to identify how they're different from competitors. So you have to say to yourself, if associations are struggling with this, then how on earth are members coping, or prospective members coping? They're actually going through the same process. And you know what happens if it's not obvious to me? I might actually decide to just leave the decision for a moment because it's not obvious to me. I'll procrastinate. And so, there's a fantastic opportunity here for associations to be working with positioning, to be helping organisations or individuals come into membership. So But it's quite useful for associations to do this, because what you end up realising, and I've done this for myself in the past, that I actually need to belong to several associations. I'm a marketeer by profession in the early days, and I ended up joining 3 different marketing membership bodies, because for me they had very clear points of difference, and that's the value in doing this work. We actually open things up and make things clear. Positioning is something that's definitely something that membership bodies should be doing, as well as when it comes around to implementing your positioning strategy. There's really 4 things you need to be thinking about. But the first thing is you need to do some sort of audit of all your collateral and check that it's all in alignment and congruent with the positioning platform that you've chosen. And you might want to refer to some of your key statements, your value proposition, your member experience statement, your mission and your vision. Is it clear in there, your point of difference? Then you need to look for ways to reinforce that positioning. So you may want to look at doing some member journey mapping and actually looking to deliberately design experiences which actually reinforce that particular position. So you really do help everybody get that experience that fits with your positioning. Then you need to make sure you communicate that to both staff, to volunteers, to stakeholders, to influencers, so that everybody understands where you're different. And then the final part of the implementation work is to measure where you are at the moment on that, measure that you're looking to measure the gap between you and your closest competitor. Is it a large gap or is it a narrow gap? So we have a question that we use in research called a semantic differential question. And by using that question, you can actually start to plot how near or far you are on a particular attribute compared to other offerings. So that's the work you need to do. So those 4 things you need to do if you're implementing a positioning strategy. You have to look at really 3 or 4 things. You have to say, how big is the gap between us and our closest competitors? If we decide to major on that, is it a narrow gap or is it a large gap? So you're looking for really large gaps. You also need to think about, is this something which people are naturally believing of us as an organisation? Because if they already naturally believe it, well, it means that you're not going to have to invest much in terms of proof. And the final thing you need to look at is how easily other organisations may be able to copy that as a positioning platform. Is it something which you can sustain long term? Is it something which is very, very hard for others to copy? So I'd be looking on those different dimensions in terms of making a smart choice about which position I should be looking at if I have different alternatives. And then you'd be looking at the benefits that you've got and looking to really select those benefits which reinforce that particular position. In fact, if you wanted to have a look at the positioning exercise on the website, my website, I've got an article there where I've actually positioned a number of different membership bodies in the marketing sector. So that will help you see how it would be used in practice. But what we shouldn't be doing is trying to lay claim to the same attribute. We should be differentiating ourselves from others that are there. And so this is really interesting work to do, Claire. I mean, people that do it, they find it very rewarding because you really do leave an imprint on the organisation, because positioning is something which is going to be around for a long time. Unlike a USP, because a USP is a point of difference, but a USP isn't really a long-term claim, it's even on a short-term claim because it is copyable. And the other good news about doing a positioning exercise is it's really a search for the obvious, what's already in people's minds, but it will require some sacrifice, because if you go down a particular line of appeal, it means that some people may decide that in fact you're not a good fit for them. So there's a lot of good reasons to actually do a positioning exercise, and I would encourage membership bodies to do this work, and particularly to do it before you do a branding exercise. Branding follows positioning, and you shouldn't be looking at doing positioning work until you've actually understood our key point of difference, because the branding needs to reinforce that the positioning that we've established.